novelist, critic, humorist, tragedian, raconteur, wit, controversialist. That is who Howard Jacobson is.
Well, I do know I'm a very sentimental man. As I've become an older man, I realize I am a sentimental man.
With age.
So with age, yes. But I was always a sentimental man, and I denied it. I hid it. I hid in a room when I was a little boy and listened to sentimental music. I would lock the door and I would play Mario Lanza records. And also Italian operas, particularly those Italian operas in which trollops die, prostitutes die of starvation and tuberculosis. And I didn't know what a consumptive whore was, but I sang songs. They broke my heart.
Do you think you sentimentalize?
I sentimentalize something. Sentimentalize the bagel.
Crispier, nuttier, crunchier, sweeter, saltier, browner, plumper, more burnished, more almondy, more floury, more boiled, stickier, more elastic, chewier in the dough, sleeker to the touch, more differentiated as to top and bottom, more variegated as to middle and sides, more distinct as to inside and out.
I sentimentalize the Jewish people.
We love being outcasts. It's great being an outcast. I don't want to be a Jew among other Jews. I want to be a Jew fighting for the corner of Jews with English people or non-English people. And I can see the argument would be that this is sick. I see the argument. But it's a sickness to which I'm wedded.
But I don't sentimentalize Dickens. He was just the business.
I've held this evening Dickens' pen.
Yes.
I've had this tiny little, just a little stick. It's barely bigger than a toothpick with a little nib on the end.
When you held Dickens' pen, your first reaction was that it made you incredibly sad.
Yes, it made me sad because it's the past, and Dickens is no more, and we are mortals, and and there with that pen, and he was called the Immortal, and there with that pen he wrote, he wrote forever, and the words are there forever, but he's not there forever. I mean, it was such an inert object, and such an unbeautiful object, really, just a plain thing, and so much vitality in that. I mean, of all writers, you feel that anything that they've touched, you feel the vitality of that writer.
And you were also so interested because it was such a slim little bit.
A little bit of nothing. And I have these banks of machines that I work with. Computers, which I kind of hate and love at the same time. Every time I hate the computer, I go out and buy another one. I rail against the computers. I'm a Luddite. I hate this machinery. And I've now come to be dependent upon it. And he could do it with that little pen.
Your father also played such an incredibly important role in your family.
My father once did a trick. It was a trick he had to do to join the Lancashire Magic Circle. You have to do a presentation. And his presentation, which he'd been practicing for ages, was to do levitation with my mother. He wanted my mother to lie on a table, and then he wanted to levitate. My mother did not want to be levitated. She was a quiet, shy woman. She didn't. So he got this idea that what he would do is he went to an early version of a sex shop in Manchester and got a blow-up doll. And the idea was, and then he asked to borrow my mother's clothes to put on this doll. So he dressed this doll like my mother. It's a very odd experience for a Jewish boy to see his mother dressed as a sex blow-up doll object. Then he thought, well, he can do even better than this, because the doll could be flat to begin with. So the doll was flat to begin with, lying on this kind of like, it was like an operating theatre, but it was like a stretcher, flat on this thing, covered up. And then he was an inventor as well, and he made this pump, which he used so that the doll, without anybody watching, the doll would suddenly blow up and assume the shape of a person, so the shape of my mother in my mother's clothes, and then would rise. So he pumped it up and it rose. There was my mother lying there, and it rose and it rose, and the pump jammed. This is absolutely true. And he couldn't stop the thing rising and rising, and also the air going into the doll, so that the doll got larger and larger and larger. It rose to the ceiling, something like as high as this, where it exploded. So there is my poor mother and her sons looking up and watching her clothes and all her underthings coming floating down from.
the necessity you feel of laughter. Laughter perhaps as a necessary ingredient in the moments of extreme pain.
Yes, yes. I think it is, I think laughter is the most precious thing, the most binding thing, human to human. I think anybody you don't laugh with, you don't really know. I think anybody you don't laugh with, you don't love.